Hello, welcome to episode 6 of the Padded Room podcast brought to you on Patari exclusively. This is being edited by me at 12:41 a.m. Because that's just how I do things. The podcast episode today is basically a discussion with a friend of mine, Sharmeen Khan. She is a mental health specialist, and this podcast was initially supposed to go up in the week that, as it turned out, was the week where the PIA plane crash happened. So we skipped that week because the topic of this podcast was kind of sensitive and deserved its own space in people's minds, and at that time it was obviously a very traumatic period for so many so many of the people who would maybe potentially listen to this, and it would just be clouded, and people were already in a lot of anguish and turmoil, and we didn't want to invade that mental space. The topic of this podcast is basically a discussion around this trip that Sharmeen took a few years ago to Peshawar, right after the APS attacks, the anniversary of which also just happens to be this past week. And this trip was part of a broader initiative to help with the obvious and severe mental health ramifications of such an incident occurring in a city, the impact of such an incident on the people, the direct victims, indirect victims, the broader populace of the area. And the conversation was basically about that trip, and focused around that trip, and the two articles that she wrote for Dawn, which can be found on their website if you search for her name. And apart from that, we talked about the general perception of psychology and mental health in Pakistan. And we also touched upon one of the initiatives that she is very personally involved in, being the NGO that she is on the board of. The NGO's name is Resettling the Indus, and what they do and how maybe people can contribute to the thing, to their efforts. So, yeah, without further ado, let's move on towards the episode. You may notice that we have kept the tone pretty light throughout. Sharmeen is a very happy, charming, bubbly personality, which sort of helped keep the mood light, but the subject matter was obviously quite dark and somber. But yeah, hopefully it doesn't get too heavy for people, and you can get all the way through without too much trouble. Yeah, so without further ado, let's start the episode. Welcome to episode 6, The Padded Room, APS, Psychology, and Pakistan. You said that you and now a bunch of psychologists, I'm now assuming, planned to go to Peshawar, where the incident had taken place. And why did you want to go initially? What was the initial, the first thought that turned into that idea?
Okay, so I have a problem. Have we started recording for the podcast?
Yeah, I'll cut in, edit, whatever. What's your
Okay,
problem?
so my problem is that if something happens, I need to be there. I need to fix it.
Okay.
Or I need to be a part of it to at least help in whichever way I possibly can.
Okay.
And when the APS tragedy happened, it just made sense that there's so many people that are grieving. It's a national tragedy, and someone should go in and help out. So I reached out on Facebook for mental health professionals who would be willing to take an initiative because I did not have the resources or the funds to do this myself. So I was looking for someone I could work with.
Right.
Within, I think, a day or two, people started tagging me in posts, and it turns out that Nayajeevan, this organization, was actually trying to put something similar together. So they ended up contacting me to lead a team of mental health professionals. So we were very lucky. Over 250 mental health professionals. I'm using the word mental health professionals because it's a more diverse term that covers psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, counselors,
Right.
diploma holders, and students,
Okay.
and just general volunteers who want to be part of the project.
Right.
So we had over 250 people who globally contact us to be a part of this project. And then we tried to be very unbiased and selected two members from all the major cities of Pakistan to come with us
Okay.
uh,
Why did you
and
do
reach a
that?
common solution. Because we had wanted this to be a long-term intervention. The initial proposal that we had put together was a short term, which was psychological first aid and helping the local government and authorities deal with the issue because no one had ever actually seen something like this happen before.
Any, I meant,
And
why did you select two people from every city? Was that like a conscious decision to get a diverse group of people from all over the country to participate? Was that
yes,
okay?
because everyone wanted to be a part of it, and it would not be fair to just take people from one region.
Of course.
And this way, even if you had two representatives from each city, they could go back and they could, not even a city, from one region, from one province,
Right.
they could go back and they could spread the word in their area. So essentially, we chose leaders from every region.
Right.
We looked into their CVs, we looked into their previous experience, and then we chose leaders who we thought could go back and replicate the program that we would come up with in their own regions.
Right. But when you say we, you mean Naya Jeevan and
Uh, yeah,
who
they were
was
paying the bills.
okay. So right. So what
Can
was
I say
the
stuff like this?
sure? I mean, it's your ramifications that you have to worry about. मुझे तो किसी ने कुछ नहीं कहना.
I mean, yeah, Nayajeevan was funding the entire thing. They were really nice. They gave me a lot of autonomy without knowing me, just on the basis of a few referrals. I got to handpick my team, which
Right.
was amazing.
Okay.
And
So let's talk about you then to start. What is your background in this field?
okay, I've done my bachelor's in applied psychology. I've done a double master's, MS MPhil in clinical and counseling psychology, and I have been torturing myself with a PhD for the last, I don't know, 3 years.
Okay.
Um,
Sounds very fun when you put it like that. Acha. So right, so that is you are a double masters in progress PhD level psychologist person. Have you had what has been your main area of experience in applying this study? Like I'm assuming you have not dealt with, or maybe you have dealt with victims of terrorism related incidents. I don't know. Have you not? What have you been looking at thus far before
okay,
APS?
so I think to clarify or simplify what I do, we can split my career into two major chunks.
Okay.
One would be my clinical expertise, which is mainly hospital-based or clinic-based.
Okay.
I've worked in a government hospital in Pakistan, in Karachi, and before that, for my degree, I had to work in a few hospitals in Lahore as well.
Right.
So there's a lot of internships and then a proper job, which I was working for the government, where you deal with an entire diversity of cases because government hospitals give you everything that is and is not in textbooks.
Right.
Over there, you deal with trauma, you deal with criminals, you deal with a regular person having a nervous breakdown, you deal with everything.
Right.
So that gives you brilliant experience. Then on the other hand, I also I don't own, I am on the board of directors of an organization
Mm-hmm.
which works in the development sector, and we work post disaster. So we go in for emergency disaster relief, and then in the long term, we adopt areas and then we work in the rehabilitation. So in that, my master's thesis was based on coping mechanisms in flood victims 10 months after their flood,
Right.
after
Does
the flood.
this, what is, do you want to tell the name of the organization?
Yes, the name of my organization, of our organization, is Resettling the
Oh,
Indus.
right, right. Okay. I know, resettling, obviously. So this, the resettling the Indus, this came about well before the APS situation.
Yes, Resettling the Indus came about in 2010, and I have been working in disasters since probably the tsunami of 2003, where I was just a volunteer collecting things.
Right.
Then in 2005, I went up to the earthquake region and I worked there. So I have been involved in disasters for many years, which maybe whether they're natural or man-made, trauma is experienced in both kinds.
Right.
So I guess you could say I do have somewhat experience in trauma. This was my second terrorist-related traumatic incident, though. My first was the Abbas Town bomb blast, which happened, I think, about 4 years ago in Karachi. It was one of the largest urban disasters, not one of the largest, but in Karachi it was, because it was an urban middle class disaster. Over 250, 300 people died, and it was right in the center of the city. So we were involved in that as well.
Right.
Quite a few sectors, in fact.
Okay. So you, so say that the Barstown thing is a specific similarity in
Hmm.
terms of experiences, but even without that, you've had several large scale disaster area involvements. So which sort of maybe directly, maybe indirectly gave you some sort of background to be ready for the APS incident. So another question I had before we get into the specific thing is this effort that you spoke about that was started when you reaching out to people, and then turns out that there's this whole parallel similar plan being organized by Naya Jivan, and then you combine forces, all of that. Now, terrorist incidents had been happening in Pakistan for many years before APS. I mean, 2003 se mera khayal hai, 2 3, on and off things have been
Hmm.
happening. But
Yeah.
did you feel up until the APS point that people had started? I mean, I lived in Karachi till 2010, till the end of 2010, and I definitely felt that people were just getting extremely jaded to the whole terrorism scenario in Pakistan. I mean, Karachi mein to the incidents stopped maybe earlier, or maybe they were not as frequent as they were in Lahore. So I can't speak for people living in Lahore, but living in Karachi, definitely. I remember specifically the one incident I remember is when Sadar mein there was the FIA ki building or the ISI ki building, I don't remember. Jispe there was a bomb blast, and I remember very clearly we had to go to a concert at Regent Plaza. Anti Disco Project was playing, and we left. We were on the way. We heard reports, and वो concert cancel हो गया. And we were then हम बैठे बस road पे फिर आइसक्रीम खा रहे थे. It sort of became such a run of the mill thing कि अच्छा it happened over there, and we're here, we're fine. I guess ये होता है. So do you feel that the APS incident, because it was in a school, because all the children were so young, because nothing maybe like this, I'm not sure, but I think nothing of the sort had happened before. Do you think that was like a significant enough change that shocked people out of their, um, I wouldn't say complacency, but sort of pulled people out of the days that they had been in, maybe? Do you think that's
Yes.
somewhat true?
I would absolutely agree with you. I think in 2002 or 2003, there was the Sheraton blast where an entire bus of foreigners were blown up, if you remember.
Right, right, the huge
And
explosion. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
we used to live pretty far away. We used to live in KDA back then. And I remember we had no idea what was happening in the morning. The roads were shut. I went to the Gymkhana, which is right next to the Sheraton. And when I was ready to leave, my car was standing outside. And in my head, the thought was, oh, what had to happen has already happened. So there's nothing to be scared of. Might as well walk to my car now. So I got out on the main road and started walking. But yes, it's because there were children involved and on such a scale. There have been mass kidnapping, there have been kidnappings and other such things with children. But on such a scale, it has been unheard of in history. Khair, it's happening in Syria now.
Yes,
But
I'm sure. I mean, Syria का तो yeah. I mean, Pakistan की तो हालात sort of pale in comparison to what's happening in Syria.
that was, I think, in modern history, one of the first times such a thing happened,
Right.
and it shook everyone. When I went there, even the locals, there is an honor, or there used to be a certain level of honor to war. You know, you don't hit civilians, you never touch children. And if this was whatever this was, it was just not something any human being could have done, because why target children?
I remember
So that,
initially, even when people used to talk about, there were reports from the Taliban, and, they used to speak to reporters. And क्योंकि इनका भी तो much a large part of their overall strategy is media involvement also. Everyone wants to have their say in the news. So I remember they used to stress that we don't attack civilians. We only attack army targets or police headquarters or ये वो एक ज़माने में I remember when this whole war on terror situation started and Pakistan was brought into it. This used to be sort of the accepted norm. तो even when that expanded, उसमें ये था कि आर्मी वालों के कॉम्प्लेक्स में ये वो, but इस तरह का पहले कभी नहीं हुआ था, I think.
oh, we can speak in Urdu?
Yeah. It's on Patari.
Awesome. ठीक है. अच्छा, तो there is this one interview that I saw many years ago of this suicide bomber that Geo somehow got their hands on.
Okay.
And what he was saying, they had blacked out his face, was that they were trying to ask him to justify that if you had blown yourself up in whatever marketplace you were caught at, not only would men and women, innocent men and women have died, but even children would have died.
Right.
And he said, yes, but those children would have grown up to be infidels. So it's better that they died when they did rather than grow up to be infidels.
Because I'm sure there has to be that level of इसको brainwashing कह दो या convincing yourself कह दो कि I mean you have to believe that everyone that is going to be hurt or killed as a result of your actions, you have to believe that they deserve it in some form or another. Either they deserve it or you're doing them a favor. तो उस तरह
Yeah,
वाली logic
that guy even believed that if he killed his parents, it's okay, क्योंकि या तो वो शहीद होंगे or they deserved what was coming to them.
Right, of course. So, right, then, so now we're at the point the APS incident has happened. I remember I was in Abu Dhabi where I used to live, and we were watching it and listening to the updates, and initially it seemed like a small thing, but then it just got more and more worse. Peshawar has had its history being close to the border with Afghanistan and stuff. They've had their history of incidents and bombings and violence, but again, nothing of this sort. So, fast forward a bit, you get your team together, you have a group, people from all over the country, everything. You went to Peshawar?
Yes.
Right. So, what happens when you get there? What's the first vibe that you get?
Okay, so the best thing was that ek to there were about 12, 15 of us who went from here. Everyone met in Islamabad or Peshawar the night before or the next day. And everyone was, okay, let's do this. What are we doing? We don't know yet, but we had people waiting for us in Peshawar, and the first line of action was going to the two major hospitals and speaking to the people there and taking it from there. We had a few meetings with the local government plan. But the most heartwarming thing was that we had not really told many people we were coming.
Okay.
And when we walked into the Pearl Continental, we were informed that there were people waiting for us in the coffee shop. And there were about 30 people waiting for us in the coffee shop who were just...
In Peshawar?
Yes, just
Okay.
citizens who wanted to help in any way possible.
कहीं से
And they had
उनको
just...
खबर आ गई थी.
हाँ, उन्हें खबर आ गई that there's a team coming who wants to help out, and they were just sitting there. And some of the stories, these were just mostly young boys who wanted to volunteer.
Right.
And one story that one of these boys told me that really stood out was that, we're sick of it. We need to do something because पेशावर में कोई ऐसा घर नहीं रहा जिससे terrorist related जनाजा नहीं उठा है.
Right. Yeah,
And
I
they
remember
have
reading
that
about this
pride.
too.
Yeah, they have that national pride. They're like, हम पाकिस्तानी हैं और पेशावर इतना खूबसूरत होता था, अब तो कोई आता ही नहीं है.
I remember my dad used to tell me कि एक ज़माने में well he used to say this about Karachi too because he's from Lahore कि एक ज़माने में these places used to be like amazing खूबसूरत places where people would be like we have to visit Karachi just to see Karachi or just to see Peshawar. But अब तो like अभी भी quite a few people I know now पिछले कुछ सालों से they've been going from Lahore and Islamabad, the photographer
Mhm.
Instagram kind of crowd वो जाते हैं and they do like a short trip. But I don't know, I mean I would not अभी भी myself consider Peshawar to be on the top of my list Pakistan में अगर कहीं घूमना हो वही because of
It's a
the
beautiful city. It's called the City of Gardens.
right
Uh, and honestly, it had a Karachi vibe. It was cooler, as in weather-wise.
right
We went in December, but it had a Karachi vibe. Say we felt safe knowing that whatever had to happen had already happened.
that is I think a very also like a sad Pakistani sort of way of coping with the situation because
It's a very jaded kind of way, but
अब तो हो
that is
गया.
who we have become.
Yeah, it's sort of like an up to ho gaya kind of thing. Chalo, okay, so
Huh.
you get to Peshawar, volunteers meeting there. What happens then? What do you do? Where do you go?
We had a debriefing. We went for our first visit. Some children from the Karachi Grammar School had sent drawings that they wanted the students in the hospital to receive. So we went, we spoke with them, we visited them.
What hospital was this?
Uh, we went to the Lady Reading Hospital first,
Okay, okay,
the LRH.
right.
And what exactly do you want me to speak about?
Like
A lot happened.
I know. I have a few examples also from the incident, but I was hoping to get some sort of narrative from you initially. Like, what was your reaction when you first met the people? How was their spirit? Were they coping with the situation? Because in your articles, you mentioned quite a few things. Firstly, you mentioned some instances of some of the children that you met, particularly this one kid that you met who had something that you termed extreme dissociative disorder.
Dissociation, not disorder.
Okay, fine. So he had extreme dissociation, and what was his scenario? You met him, talked to him.
Uh, okay, so basically the ward we went into, the children who were there, were being visited by a lot of people. There were a
Okay,
lot of other doctors and volunteers coming in from Lahore and Islamabad, and then there was the army and local ministers. So since they had a constant stream of guests that kept coming in, they felt like heroes for being survivors, which really probably um, help delay or maybe even get rid of whatever survivor's guilt they may or may not have felt for outliving their colleagues,
right.
their fellow students. So this one child that I met, he was, the nurses told me, the doctors told me, his own father was standing there. His father was like, my son has not cried yet, and he was very proud of that. And he said, all of these children, they're all in so much pain, and that child had, I think, been shot twice.
Oh, this kid whose
And
dad was there?
yeah,
Acha.
I think he'd been shot twice, if I remember correctly.
Hmm.
And he said, he's a trooper because if someone else starts crying, he's the one who's cheering them up, and he's always on his wheelchair going from bed to bed, making sure everyone's fine. So we went up to him, we greeted him, offered him chocolates, gave him a card from, the kids in Karachi. And he said, you know what? ये चॉकलेट आप किसी और को दे दें.
Hmm.
And I'm like, नहीं, ये तो आपके लिए आई है ना, औरों को मिल चुकी है. So he said, नहीं, किसी और भाई को दे दें, उसको ज्यादा जरूरत है. So instead of giving him 1 or 2 chocolates, we left an entire box with him because we said, ये बाद में आप अपने हाथों से बाकी लोगों को दे देना.
Okay.
Because, he was the helper. He said, I can't see other people suffering and all of that. So then I took a round of the ward, met a lot of other people, spoke to some parents. Actually, there's one of the parents of one of these students I'm still in touch with. And she's still, they've moved. They don't live in Peshawar anymore. But, and that's all I'm going to disclose about them
Sure.
for anonymity. But they remember. And that was the whole idea. Psychological first aid is all about getting a foot in the door, making them remember you. Because it is people who come in when you need them most that you remember when that time ends,
Right.
right? So anyway, so when we were done, and again, I went up to this child. I really liked him, so I met him twice. I'm like, "Acha Khuda Hafiz," and he goes, "Assalamu alaikum." And I asked him कि मुझे सलाम क्यों कर रहे हो? अभी तो हम मिलके गए थे. And he had forgotten completely that we'd ever met, because that face, that politeness, the smile, that was all a facade to make everyone believe that he was okay.
Right.
When in actual fact, dissociation would mean that he was completely disoriented and he was not exactly sure what was going on around him.
So this was sort of like a backup mode that his mind just went into, just, keep smiling, be nice to everyone, or bus.
Yes, a coping mechanism or
Right.
autopilot, whatever you want to call it. And we all have that, okay, acha, okay, we just got fired, but we need to go for a family dinner. So
Yeah.
let's just keep a happy face. घर आकर रोएंगे या घर आके सोचेंगे क्या करना है.
Right.
At some point or the other, we all do have this autopilot, but for a 14 or a 13-year-old child to put that up in front of so many people is just, it's heartbreaking.
Do you feel he was doing this consciously, or he wasn't aware that he was doing this?
He probably was not even aware he was doing this. Most of us aren't aware. I just put it into words, but we don't really think so much. We just know that, okay, we cannot have a breakdown right now.
Right.
Especially, I think people who have children could relate to this better, because life is difficult. There are times we can't pay bills, but you won't tell your child that you can't go to school from tomorrow because आपकी fees नहीं भरी जा रही. Everyone has problems. We just learn how to have masks.
Right.
And it's not conscious. It's a very unconscious thing.
Right. Okay. And how were the staff? How was the staff? Because you mentioned that another incident you mentioned in your article was that one of the surgeons there was just working as soon as he was there at the hospital, and then the injured started coming in, and he's just working, and he in the panic of the situation and in the chaos, he forgot for a second that his wife taught at the school. So, and then I think he discovered that she was also among one of the casualties, and then he just went back to working. Aisa bhi kuch tha, do you remember?
Yeah, this is a story that was actually mentioned to us by 2 or 3 different people. In this, I'm going to say this story is important, but the people who told us the story is more important.
Okay.
Because what we didn't realize was that when we went there, our most active volunteers were from a local youth organization.
Okay.
And young graduates and stuff, so they had been taking us around. वो रात को night shift करते थे और सारा दिन हमारे साथ घूमते थे.
Okay.
And these boys were the ones who finally verified the story. हम 5-6 जगह से सुन चुके थे कि वहाँ के एक major surgeon थे. उनकी Begum was a teacher. They had spoken 15 minutes before this incident.
Right.
When the casualties started coming in, he didn't know. बाद में उसे like how he found out was that I think her body was brought in, and he was told कि आपकी your wife's body is here, and he's like, अच्छा, okay, fine, but I need to stitch these kids up, because even the dead bodies of the children were made to look more presentable before they're given back to their parents.
Of course, yes.
Okay, but the thing is that what we forgot, and that is an oversight on our part, is that these doctors who were working with us had also been present on that day.
Oh, the
And
doctors
they had
who were
also
there with
seen,
you.
yes, our volunteers, and they had also seen a lot of things, and it did obviously affect them, and they were tired, and they were working with us. They were running on adrenaline. They were working with us, and when they told us stories of how their seniors reacted and how the medical superintendent of the hospital had broken down crying, they said, our strength comes from seeing that our seniors are in control, and when you see them lose control, it's hard for them to keep it together.
Right. I mean, of course, ये तो the medical profession, and especially in such a situation, is a completely different level of, I guess, stress and emotionality. ये तो normal offices में भी ये होता है कि, if you have a good boss, and if your boss is working, then everyone's working. And if your boss is, chilled out about something, then the whole department's fine or whatever. तो ये तो normal offices में भी होता है. तो I'm sure hospitals में तो फिर this must be like exponentially more intense.
Of course. I have an example of Recently, I was speaking to someone who I've speaking to quite a few people who used to work in a hospital in Hangu. अब
Okay.
हंगू में भी यही है कि बॉम्ब ब्लास्ट होते हैं, बच्चों की लाशें आ रही होती हैं. Like when there's a airstrike over there, there's all kinds of things. Ab Hangu has become much safer over the last few years. But when things used to be bad, there used to be certain body parts that used to be coming in buckets. And you
Right.
had to figure out, it was a jigsaw puzzle, कि ये टांग किसकी है, ये हाथ
That's
किसका है.
yeah, that's crazy. Mm-hmm.
And when you work in such circumstances on a long-term basis, um, not everyone can handle it. People either have breakdowns or they develop a certain level of skill which is most effective in these emergencies. Then these people would get bored from a normal day-to-day routine because they thrive in such situations.
Right, right,
So
right.
I guess that's also a personality type. I've heard of a lot of doctors who are very good in these situations. They're on it, and they can be working 48 hours nonstop.
Right. Some people end up needing a crisis sort of
Yep.
situation, huh? You
Yes.
read about this in war veterans also. Okay, people come back from war or some battle and then they don't understand how to get back into regular life without things going insane all around them. So I guess this is sort of similar. And then another thing you mentioned in the list I had made of direct incidents was a psychological epidemic. What is a psychological epidemic?
Anything that happens on a large scale is an epidemic.
Sure.
A psychological epidemic would be something that would impact people on a large scale. For example, one of the most famous examples of a psychological epidemic would be 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
It was a global phenomenon, and around the world, 5,000 people dying. It affected us
Do you remember
because
where you were?
yes, I was trying to watch Friends, and they switched it off because they wanted to show us 9/11.
Yeah.
I mean, the World Trade Center falling. And honestly speaking, the age I was at, I was like, no, I want to watch Friends. ये क्या building गिरा रहा है?
Right. I
At that
remember,
point, you
yeah.
don't realize the impact of what's happening until it's happened.
Well, I guess we all realized काफी
Yeah,
अच्छे तरीके से
at
the impact.
8:30, when I realized my program wasn't coming, I'm like, might as well pay attention to what they're trying to tell me.
Yeah.
You know?
Waki.
But the point is that that was a global epidemic because when something that you think can never happen happens, and it's a trauma that is shared amongst people, it is an epidemic. So Peshawar or KPK are very good examples for this, because when the APS thing happened, there's another story I quoted, if you read it, of a policeman that I met,
The traffic policeman.
हमने गलत parking की थी, गलती हमारी थी. He came, he spoke to us, and he broke down because he said कुछ भी हो जाए बच्चों के साथ नहीं करते. It goes against every code of humanity कि आप बच्चे को ऐसे करें. And if you take it further, because the article you read is about 2 years old, उसके बाद बादशाह खान यूनिवर्सिटी का इंसिडेंट हुआ था in again Charsada, which is part of Peshawar essentially. And by the time that happened, all of the people that I have been in touch with for the last couple of years, they started posting articles like this is an attack on KPK and against Pashtuns, and things like that. And whereas I was posting social media has become very important, and
Right.
I was following the story, and I was posting about how this is an attack on Pakistan and Pakistanis. And one of the doctors, who is actually a very good friend of mine, actually contacted me and said, no, you need to recognize कि ये पश्तून्स के खिलाफ हो रहा है. And I said, देखो आप पश्तून हो या सिंधी हो पंजाबी हो, हम सब पाकिस्तानी हैं. तो why would you do that? But then people tend to close in on themselves, and it is an epidemic because we met heads of universities and people in very powerful places in Peshawar who actually, they've all been through it. Again, I will go back to the quote that when I reached Peshawar, one of the young volunteers told me कि कोई ऐसा घर नहीं जहाँ से जनाजा नहीं उठा. So if you go through constant trauma again and again and again, everyone just they're all feeling the same thing. They're all traumatized. They're not dealing with that trauma. And it just leads to them closing their doors on the rest of the world so that they can heal in peace, I guess.
Right,
Am
right.
I like making any sense?
No, no, and it does make sense. This is a very common like a tribe mentality sort of thing that breaks out. That humans sort of feel safer within their own tribes. So I guess this
It
is
happened
sort
in
of
America as well,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah, yeah,
it took many more years because the population was more. I mean, KPK is a smaller population in comparison,
hmm.
but ab jaakar, closing down to immigrants and
Yeah,
all of that, it's
yeah, yeah.
all, repercussions of that one thing.
Yep, yep. And well, and मतलब उसके बाद फिर जो you get the media frenzy or the hype and then the rumors and the word of mouth and if it keeps going round and round and फिर if everything is reinforced कि नहीं ये बस बाहर से लोग आ रहे हैं these are the problem. So then you're like, okay, then all of us have to stick together and ये बाहर वाले लोगों को फिर बाहर रखो and that's how things will improve. So that's sort of what's happening over there or how part of the population is dealing with it.
Here as well, after 2001, so much has changed in our culture. My grandmother is a foreigner.
Hmm.
And after, I think in 2002, when she came to Pakistan, because she moved to Dubai to live with the rest of my family who lives
Hmm.
there,
Hmm.
when she used to come to Pakistan for the first time, and she's been here over 50 years,
Right.
Mirpur Khas, and my Nana was in the army. She's lived everywhere.
Right.
Uh, and for the first time, she's like, मैं सड़क पे जाती थी, and they used to be like, oh, American, oh,
Hmm.
गोरी. तो ये जो mentality आई है, and little kids or beggars looking down on her because that is, khair, we also exploit them for their foreign exchange.
Right.
But that mentality that gori hai, to American hogi.
Part of our problem.
She was really scared.
Right.
She
Yeah.
actually cut down coming back because she said it's not safe for me.
Yep.
Someone I know, a rishadar of mine who looks gori,
Hmm.
actually, she was driving to work one day and she found an explosive device on her car
Yeah.
just
No,
because
that's.
of the way she looked.
Yep. Yep. I can imagine. And हमारे भी obviously all of our problems again ये tribe mentality sort of enforce होती है. Be this a failure of the political system or the security system or whatever. We blame everyone else. We blame India. We blame Afghanistan. Obviously, Israel is always involved, and then America की साजिश है. So when you reinforce that narrative for decades, as has been happening, I think ये 70s से तो ये in some shape चल ही रहा है. So
Mm-hmm.
that's people are born into this. So why would they
Of
not
course.
react like this?
Is that a question?
No, I mean sort of like a rhetorical, rhetorical सीधा.
Yes, exactly. I was wondering it was rhetorical how to
हाँ,
respond to that.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do have an answer to your rhetorical question,
Oh, you
वैसे.
do? Okay.
The way you said that, why would people not react to this? And because we all have our tribal mentality, that is another thing that our organization, Resettling the Indus, is trying to work on.
Okay.
हमारी tribal mentality में एक और भी चीज़ है that we look for help externally. कि या तो शहर से help आएगी या बाहर मुल्क से aid आएगा, and which is why over the years the entire concept of NGO has become कि अमीर लोग हैं जो आकर हमें मुफ्त में चीज़ें देंगे. And essentially, this is completely different from the APS problem, but we are turning into a nation of beggars.
Right.
So for that, we actually go and we try to empower locals to own their own problems, stop blaming others, and take control of their lives and build back for themselves so that there's a certain level of pride in whatever they achieve in their lives and for their own communities.
So you do feel that there are instances where people are taking the work NGOs do for granted. You mean कि ये तो आ ही जाएंगे, हमारा काम कोई और आके हल कर देगा.
Not instances, it's become very, very common. Maybe not in urban settings as much as rural, but people expect it कि अगर NGO नहीं आएगी तो आर्मी आएगी, आर्मी नहीं आएगी तो कोई तो आ ही जाएगा, लोकल MNA, MPA जो भी होता है कि हमेशा यूनियन काउंसिल लीडर, ठीक है, people always look up. It's our जो हमारे सेंचुरी से हम एक फ्यूडल मेंटालिटी से गुजरते हुए आए हैं. It has now just shifted. We're still in the whole ustad shagird mentality.
Right, right. That makes so much sense, वैसे the feudal वाली बात कि because you're working sort of किसी और की ज़मीन पे and that other person is sort of your boss slash ruler slash owner, तो कोई भी मसला होगा तो वो साईं ने हल करना है और हम तो खुद कर ही नहीं सकते because that's how the hierarchy works. So that's just been substituted in a way.
हाँ, और अब जमाना बदल गया है. अब जैसे शहर में तो फ्यूडालिटी नहीं है, और गांवों में भी लैंड ओनरशिप हैज इंक्रीज्ड फॉर जनरल पीपल,
Right.
मगर फिर भी वो मेंटालिटी वहीं की वहीं रह गई है. और इस मेंटालिटी को बदलने में हम जितना कर सकते हैं, क्योंकि शहर में आके लोग यूनिवर्सिटी पढ़ के जाते हैं और बोलते हैं नहीं यार, बॉस ने कह दिया तो नहीं. आई मीन ऑब्वियसली यू नीड टू लिसन टू योर बॉस, प्लीज. World who is listening to this, listen to your bosses. Right? But my point is that think for yourself, and our school system doesn't teach us that. No one really teaches us to think, and that is one thing we really stress on, that everyone should think and make their own lives, and we facilitate people to make their own lives. We don't make it for them.
Right. By we, you mean your organization.
Resettling the Indian.
Right,
Yes.
right. Okay. So I wanted to head back to the Peshawar scenario. You mentioned quite a few tiers of victims of such incidents. Well, let's go through them one by one. You mentioned 3. Firstly, was the highest risk people. The sort of purpose of discussing all of this is because this happens in Pakistan, and unfortunately, I don't think it's going to stop anytime in our immediate future. So this might be good for people to know. So you mentioned like this tier of victims in the sense that there's a highest risk of people who are the direct victims, people who are actually involved in the tragedy. And then there's a second tier, which is the family, and the last tier, which is maybe the doctors, the relief teams, law enforcement agencies. So could you talk about that a bit in this tier breakdown sort of situation?
Okay, generally, in any disaster, natural, man-made, terrorist, any major social change, what happens is the people who are impacted the most are those whose homes have been lost or destroyed, or whose family members have been killed.
Right.
So what happens is they are the most distraught, the survivors who feel कि मैं क्यों जिंदा हूँ और मेरा दोस्त क्यों मर गया. वो सारी guilt and trauma जो होती है, it takes longer to deal with, and needs the most sensitivity when dealt with.
Right.
Then उनके family members आते हैं, उनके पड़ोसी आते हैं, and that could have been my son. अली सही APS नहीं जाता, मगर अली भी तो इसी लड़के की उम्र का था.
Like I remember a similar incident happening when the Air Blue plane crashed in Islamabad, which went from Karachi, and there were so many people in like my university के मेरे extended जानने वाले who knew someone who was on that plane. But उस वक्त भी I remember quite a few people thinking about stuff के what if my friend was on that plane? Not even myself or my son or whoever, but मेरा भी कोई जानने वाला हो सकता था. Everyone knew like once removed sort of कोई. So I understand what I'm trying to say is this makes sense. This
Of course it does.
Yeah.
And I understand what you are saying as well, because everyone has has been impacted by whatever happens in our country. No one is not touched by it.
Right.
Which is why mental health is so important.
Right. And later on I do want to talk to you about the perception of mental health in Pakistan. But हाँ मतलब अब तो terrorist incident, bomb blast वगैरह तो छोड़ो, we directly know people who have been killed as a result of this sort of wave of violence that is in Pakistan and stuff. Sabeen Mahmood comes to mind and other such people.
By the way, Sabeen Mahmood was part of this team that went to APS. She was in charge of technology, because we were looking into tele-counseling for the telemental health of the kids. And since Sabine was a techie, she had been put in charge of taking care of that. So the day that we had to go speak to the local government, Sabine had led the team that went to APS itself to check out what facilities they had and what they would require for future counseling sessions. So she was very closely involved with the APS project.
Another one of her many amazing projects. But acha. Okay, so that's the first year. The second year, families direct impact, or the people directly involved, their families, their janne wale. Then there's also the doctors, the relief teams. I'm assuming that would include people like you, maybe, who went there.
Yes.
So,
And it's very, very important to understand that because most people who work in such areas, um, we come from, I mean, most of us come from places that we can afford to travel, which is why we go to such areas. And वहाँ जाकर जब हम काम करते हैं और लोगों के मसले देखते हैं, it comes with a certain level of guilt.
of course, huh?
ट्रॉमा तो ट्रॉमा है, आप किसी और का दुख दर्द देख रहे हैं, किसी और के losses देख रहे हैं. You tend to absorb a lot of it because you go in as a healer, as a doctor, or as a psychologist or a volunteer. You're going to help because you actually care. You have that empathy towards them. And you absorb a lot of their stress. And then on top of that, when you go home and you see that your parents are still alive, your children are still there, your house has not been impacted, there's guilt that how can I be so comfortable? How can I be sleeping with an air conditioner जब थर पार कर में पानी नहीं है पीने को? Yeah, whatever.
It's like
And
an
that is
extended survivor's guilt sort of situation.
yes. And it is very important that this is recognized, and whoever goes in to help, since people don't know that this is a phenomenon at all, it is very, very common to fall prey to it. So don't, like, for all of the people who are listening to this who do actually go and help out in such situations, I would say do not deprive yourself of what you deserve. Reward yourself, in fact, when you come back home from such things so that you can go again. Otherwise, it leads to burnout. And burnout means that you won't be able to work in such a field on a sustainable basis if you don't take care of yourself.
I would imagine it leads to like various forms of depression, वगैरह, if you keep obsessing about your perceived privilege, yeah, that survivor's guilt wala scene.
Of course, there was a student who went in with us, I think about a year after the 2010 flood. So in 2011, when already house building had started and things looked nicer, people were happier, and this was a VIP trip as compared to what we were used to because we'd taken a whole bunch of students and we were showing them the work we had done. And one of the girls who went on that trip, she came back and for a week, she just, she kept telling her parents कि हमारा घर इतना बड़ा क्यों है? मेरा कमरा इतना बड़ा क्यों है? And it was just getting to कि हम जहाँ सोए थे, वो इतनी छोटी सी जगह थी. And her parents actually called us in and they said कि भाई, where did you take her? And fine, it worked great for us. We got a lot of donations and we built 10 more houses. But for that girl, it was very traumatic because it was her first experience in being in a place, and she wanted to give her house away. So there has to be you need to be able to set your limits.
No, I'm sure.
For
मतलब ये तो एक वो है ना कि मुंह पे एक reality check हो जाए कि भाई this is your life and this is what is also happening to people. Which I mean I see this all the time. आजकल on the internet, it's something I've been ranting about a lot, especially on places like Twitter where people post कि I can't believe किसी की जबरदस्ती शादी करा दी, or I can't believe that this is happening. Now, firstly, I'm surprised that people can't believe इस तरह की चीज़ें जो कि पाकिस्तान में कोई 70 साल से होती हुई आ रही हैं. So but that also shows that there is a huge disconnect maybe from people who we maybe know or associate with on the internet. If you're on the internet in Pakistan, you're automatically privileged. And there has to be a disconnect between you and millions of other people who are living in the country who are going through problems that you can't even begin to imagine. मतलब अगर तुम्हें, if you can't believe कि किसी के घर वाले उसकी ज़बरदस्ती शादी कर रहे हैं, तो how will you believe like that things like honor killing और ये कुरान से शादी और ये वो इस तरह की चीज़ें happen, right? So I'm assuming that this is a result. If you put someone that insulated or removed into a stressful situation like a post-tragedy environment, तो फिर तो ये और heavily उनके साथ resonate होगा कि I can't believe ऐसा भी हो सकता है. And then their whole life will feel, pointless or something, like hollow to them maybe.
हाँ, इसीलिए it's most important that the helpers take care of themselves. तो जो लोग जा रहे हैं उनका ख्याल रखने के लिए उनकी adequate training in how to protect themselves, and the people who take them in to make sure कि उनकी वापस आकर debriefing हो, to make sure that they are dealing with the trauma the way they should in a healthy manner. ये
Right.
सब बहुत बहुत जरूरी होता है.
Right. Because then otherwise you can't end up causing more liabilities, right? कि मतलब वो तो एक तो वो लोग हैं जो incident में involved थे and who have their own host of issues, और फिर the people we took also end up having mazid problems that now we also have to solve. So
हाँ,
that doesn't
ऐसे
help anyone.
जगहों पे आपके मसलों के लिए टाइम नहीं होता क्योंकि आप ऑब्वियसली किसी और के मसलों से डील करें, आपके मसले वापस आके डील होते हैं.
Right.
A debriefing is important but not there. So you need to make sure that the people who go in and work with you are solid, and
They need to be
over the
aware
years,
of what they're getting into.
and a degree is not important for that. I will make that very clear that if anyone wants to help out in making their country a better, a safer, or however they want to help, that is open for everyone. But just, make sure that, your team is solid and you have a great support system around you. That is also very, very important.
Acha. So, after having discussed all of this, based on your experience pre APS and after this event and your team and this expedition and all of that, what do you feel is the perception of mental health issues in Pakistan, of the importance of recognizing them, diagnosing them, taking care of them? Do you think people on the whole, not us privileged internet, Google, Skype type log, like the regular person, not even on the street, because Pakistan mein to khair bahut log hain, but do you feel that there is any level of mass awareness of mental health issues in Pakistan?
Okay, I'm gonna answer this in 3 different stages.
Okay.
Okay, the general middle class, which would be the educated people, not just us, but everyone who's educated in Pakistan.
Right.
Then the judiciary, and then the third would be everyone else.
Okay.
Okay,
By judiciary, you mean
so
the actual legal system?
yeah, the legal
Acha.
system.
Okay.
So when we had gone in for APS, there was a proposal that we had put together, and on the basis of that proposal, they had asked us for it because it was based on international guidelines. There's a certain format for international guidelines of how to deal with disasters, and I've been training people in it for the last 5-6 years. So uske basis pe the long-term, short-term plan that we started this conversation with.
Right.
So they kept it and they said, we would like to use this for the KPK Mental Health Action Plan, which I'm assuming they did work on later. There is a mental health ordinance that has been in place since, I think, 2012, 2002.
Okay.
But it's an ordinance. Now, from what I had heard was, I think 2-3 years ago, it had become a legal thing, a law.
Okay.
However, despite that having become a law and that protects the rights of people who have mental health problems or have been through traumatic situations, I don't know if you've heard or not, sometime last month, there was a man who was on a murder trial and he was pleading being mentally unfit to
Right.
pursue a trial because he had killed someone not in cold blood, but because of, mental health problems. And the Supreme Court had denied the plea.
Right, because they said that the defense apparently was that he was schizophrenic, and the Supreme Court said that we do not recognize this as a valid mental illness.
And that is a problem because when I worked for the government, I had a lot of cases coming in from jail ward, and our job was to make sure that they're not faking their mental disorders.
Which is actually very interesting because I mentioned this exact incident to someone I know, and that person was like dismissive कि नहीं ये सब ड्रामा है और हमारे कानून के हिसाब से इसकी सज़ा ये होती है और ये होनी चाहिए, ये मेंटल इलनेस वगैरह जो है ये सब बकवास होती है. Obviously there is sort of like a pushback against what people feel is maybe excuses, and we do have this need to see punishment in our society, but this perception is not unique. Matlab, it's not uncommon, I believe.
It's not uncommon at all, to the point that I had someone come to me. This was a case that I refused to see because it was a dangerous case,
Okay.
and it was not something that I wanted to expose my students to.
Right.
So it was a murderer
Okay.
and who had been diagnosed with a certain mental health problem since the age of 19.
Okay.
And he killed someone in cold blood, but then again, it wasn't really cold blood because he was not aware that what he was doing was wrong.
Right.
And he admitted to it. He said that he was guilty to it. I mean, not actually guilty, but the verdict was guilty. And he went to jail. Now, the thing is, in Pakistan, the second you go to jail, अगर आपको blood pressure, diabetes ऐसा कोई भी मसला है, वहाँ की फार्मेसी में आपको ड्रग्स मिल जाती हैं या आपकी फैमिली ड्रग्स प्रोवाइड करती है.
अच्छा.
अगर आपको कोई मेंटल हेल्थ प्रॉब्लम है, बेशक डिप्रेशन हो, बाइपोलैरिटी हो, स्किज़ोफ्रेनिया हो, बहुत ऐसे देखे हैं, आपको वहाँ दवाई नहीं मिलती है. तो ऑब्वियसली आपके सिम्टम्स वापस आ जाते हैं, आप जाकर कोई वायलेंट चीज करते हैं एंड आपकी सजा कैद बामुशक्कत और लाइक जो आपका सब कुछ होता है it becomes even worse on you.
Right. दवाई मिलती नहीं है. Is it because it's not available or because it's not considered a valid illness कि वो दवाई रखें?
It's not considered a valid illness, so
अच्छा.
nobody's checking up on you to make sure if you're having a medication or not. And according to the law, if you have mental health problems, you don't go to prison. You go to a specific institution which is for criminally uh, for people who are not in their right frame of mind and
Right.
yet are criminals,
Right. Right.
right?
Hmm.
Like Gotham. Uh,
Exactly. So do we have those?
I'm not sure. I mean, like I said, civil hospital में एक jail ward होता था, वहां से लोग आते थे मेरे पास.
Right.
But it was just there was so much I don't know, paperwork. They were sent to us. We used to see civil hospital के cases, but we were one step removed because again, nobody wants to write that letter which would be presented in court. And since मुझे डर नहीं लगता कि कोई मेरे पीछे आए या ना आए, I used to write them. So it was all आप बताएं discharge करना है कि नहीं, आप बताएं, ये बताएं, मैं बताऊं, वो बताएं.
Right.
So it was just a lot of, shuffling them around, which again is not good for their mental health.
Because no one wants
And
to take the responsibility कि हाँ जी this guy is mentally unfit और इसको आप ट्रांसफर कर दें, फिर वो आगे जाके फिर कुछ कर ले, तो फिर you'll be like bro this is what you said, now you're on the hook. पाकिस्तान में
they're
people.
already, most of them are either already convicted
Right.
or they're waiting for their trial. Either ways, it doesn't matter because your letter would just say कि अच्छा ठीक है, this guy needs medicine, which he would never get.
Okay.
So I had very long conversations with the policemen who used to bring them in, and they're like, हम क्या करें? They didn't like because उनकी criminal records मेरे सामने नहीं आते थे.
Right.
तो they didn't know कि इनका last name क्या है, ये कहाँ से आए हैं. Since we had no details, we could not contact the family.
And you obviously couldn't pull any previous medical records and stuff also.
Exactly. So वो एक बहुत लंबी चीज होती है, and you just work with what you have. And if someone comes in who has, some form of psychosis would be schizophrenia, one form of it. You never believe what the person is saying to you because someone who has any form of psychosis is not in touch with reality.
Right.
So, they could be saying anything. You can't really believe them. You need to contact a family member, which was impossible. Okay, so that is the judiciary. Let's not waste more time on that unless you have a question.
No, that's fine.
Okay, then there is surprisingly us, जो आपकी educated middle class, upper middle class, lower middle class हो गए. The irony is that from my experience, like I told you again, I've seen a diversity of patients from across Pakistan. That's the best part of government institutions के हर जगह से लोग आते हैं.
Right.
And हमारे अंदर जितना स्टिग्मा है ना कि नहीं माहिर नफ्सियात के पास जाएंगे तो हम पागल हैं तो फिर शादी नहीं होगी, और रिश्ते अच्छे नहीं आएंगे, या फिर नहीं इसको स्किज़ोफ्रेनिया नहीं, इस पे जिन चढ़ा हुआ है तो बाबा जी के पास जाते हैं और फलाने दरबार में जाकर मन्नत करते हैं. ये सारी चीजें हमारे तबके में ज्यादा होती हैं.
I remember because this is actually something I ended up being a part of myself, because a few years ago I was talking to a family member and she's a doctor, and she was just mentioning some of the more extreme symptoms that result from depression. And उस वक्त मैंने भी कहा था कि ये तो पागल लग रहा है मुझे. And she's like, yeah, that's what happens. People say कि ये तो पागल है. even though it's maybe depression or something that's completely different than just
Mm-hmm.
the label pagal and just the indifference that may come with it. तो अच्छा man, of course हमारे यहाँ स्टिग्मा से तो बहुत डर है. So everyone will go with the jinn or the shadi fear or that maybe more than just going to a psychologist.
Yeah, yeah, फिर okay, a very old-fashioned concept which actually is very Greek, like ancient Greece से आता है, is कि if a girl starts acting up or she starts crying too much or just hysterical हो रही है, शादी करा दो ठीक हो जाएगी.
This is a
वो
Greek
तो
myth?
it's Greek because the word hysteria,
Oh, right, right.
hyster actually means uterus.
Oh, shit.
So hysteria means wandering uterus. सो दिस है कि यूटरस जो है वो डिसलॉज होकर आपके जिस्म के अंदर आगे पीछे हो रहा है, जिसकी वजह से औरत बहुत ज्यादा रो रही है या हंस रही है या व्हाटएवर कर रही है, तो उसकी शादी करा दो, वो सीधी हो जाएगी.
Great. So the
सो
Greeks did
दैट
not have everything right. Another top fact now being brought to you on
ऑफ
this
कोर्स नॉट.
podcast.
या आई मीन देयर एम्पायर एंडेड, डिड इट नॉट?
हाँ हाँ ये तो है.
तो उसके अंदर लाइक आई हैव डेल्ट विद अ लॉट ऑफ पीपल हु कम अप टू मी एंड लाइक हाँ इसकी शादी करा देंगे ठीक हो जाएगी या ठीक
पाकिस्तान
हो
में तो
जाएगा.
हर मसले का हल शादी है. नौकरी अच्छी नहीं है शादी करा दो. शादी हो गई खुश
नौकरी
नहीं है.
अच्छी है शादी करा दो.
हाँ नौकरी अच्छी है तो जल्दी करा दो इससे पहले कि कुछ मसला हो जाए. शादी हो गई बच्चे करा दो. अगर खुश नहीं है बच्चे होंगे तो सब सही हो जाएगा. इट्स जस्ट दिस वन स्टेप फर्दर वाली सिचुएशन which will somehow magically solve every problem when you think about
Okay,
it.
so world who is listening to this, I want to say something to you.
अच्छा.
Exactly what Ali said. पैसे हैं शादी करा दो, शादी हो गई बच्चे करा दो, एक हुआ है दूसरा कब आ रहा है, दूसरा हो गया तीसरा कब आ रहा है, तीसरा आएगा ना दिल भाई, भाई बस कर दो क्या कर रहे हो, like why you having so many kids? Society is never going to be happy with you, so please just do exactly what makes you happy.
हाँ I mean you see people
That's like
in Karachi, a couple on a motorcycle और 5 बच्चे टंगे हुए हैं मोटरसाइकिल पे. If you can't afford a car for your family, how will you afford education for your 5 kids? And that's just not a thing. हो जाएगा बस खुद ही हो जाएगा बस.
education is expensive. God is only, I mean जो खुदा आपका रिस्क देता है ना, खुदा ने सिर्फ आपको प्रॉमिस किया है कि कोई भूखा नहीं सोएगा,
या
बाकी आपके सर पे है.
नहीं
और आपने
इसमें
ग्रामर स्कूल अपने बच्चों को भेजना है ना, तो प्लीज कम पे अच्छे पता करना.
okay so in our middle class educated sort of aware tabka also you're saying it's a stigma.
सबसे ज्यादा स्टिग्मा यहाँ है because at least in the lower classes, ठीक है, they are not aware of what it is. They have not been told, but we have a lot of cases जो 5-6 department से होते होते हमारे पास आते हैं. A lot of people are, once they come to us and they sit with us and we explain to them what's happening, they're so much more open to the idea of mental health. Because essentially, if I can just summarize this for anyone who still has any questions, अगर आपको बुखार होता है आप डॉक्टर के पास जाते हैं, बुखार के 50 वजूहात हो सकती हैं. आपका गला खराब हो सकता है, आपको कोई इन्फेक्शन हो सकता है, एनीथिंग, राइट? इट्स अ बुखार.
Right.
So the same way, like if there's something wrong with your thinking, and I'm not saying that सोच की गलती कुछ भी हो सकती है, आपको गुस्सा बहुत ज्यादा आ रहा है, नींद नहीं आ रही, your social or occupational functioning is suffering in some way. It does not mean that aap pagal hai. It just means that if you go to someone who knows about this, an expert, they might be able to help you deal with it. You're not crazy, you just need someone to check it out. It could be a brain flu, so to speak.
Sure. And speaking of ये classes, Pakistan में तो there is a very clear link between your economic class and your level of education or awareness. Pakistan in a very general but also a very common sense. So just for people listening, this is why we're saying lower class, middle class. Because Pakistan में if you have the more money you have, the more chances there are that you will be educated. Because Pakistan में ऐसे भी गरीब लोग हैं जिनके पास they just don't have the money or the time or just the capacity in their life to educate themselves or their children. तो उन लोगों में you're saying कि ये stigma middle class या partial educated लोगों से कम है. That's what you're
हाँ.
saying? Yeah, okay.
They're more open to it. I mean, I'll give you an example. I had this very independent kid, living alone, ran away from home, whatever. supporting himself, educating himself, working at a naan ki dukan, who used to come to me. You know, he chose when he wanted to end therapy. We ended it on his terms. He used to pay himself everything. He came back to me 2 years later and said, "Hey, guess what? I'm going to England for my university."
Oh
He
shit.
was open-minded enough to realize that, you know, he was having a hard time. He had no parents. He needed to speak to someone. He dealt with his problems with me. And when he was ready, he actually came back and he told me, "You know what? I'm doing great. I'm going abroad to study. Thank you. This has been nice." So
I
it's
guess
very rewarding
yeah,
as well.
and I would assume that people who are aware that they are maybe not educated or aren't exposed to the world, they might be more receptive to new information as compared to people. वही वाली बात है ना कि a lot of knowledge is a good thing, but a little knowledge can be a very dangerous thing. तो maybe that is also part of it कि जिन लोगों को पता है कि अच्छा हमें शायद इतनी knowledge नहीं है तो they're more aware to outside information as compared to some people who think कि नहीं नहीं हमें पता है और ये बस bad scene है and we just don't need to get involved. Do you think that's true?
You are right. The little knowledge, lot of knowledge thing. But on the other hand, it's also about how people cannot explain themselves, maybe. Because I know a lot of people who come to me and say, "We really need to come for a session, but we don't know how we will explain it to our parents or our significant others." And वो नहीं समझेंगे. हमें पता है ये सही है, मगर हम उनको किस तरह समझाएं? हमने कहा आप उन्हें भी साथ ले आए, मैं समझा दूंगी. नहीं, वो साथ नहीं आएंगे और वो ना ही हमें आने देंगे, हमें इजाजत नहीं है. तो
So it doesn't
and
even
मैं
have to be your own personal stigma. It could be the stigma of the people around you that keeps you from getting the help you
seeking
need.
the help that you need. Yes.
That's crazy. So, what do you see? Do you see any hope? Do you see things improving? Are people working towards changing this perception, or what people listening? Where could they go to gain more knowledge? Where could they go to help or volunteer, or what should they do to dispel this stigma? Maybe. Do you have any ideas?
Okay, I think things are getting better because there are more than just a few universities now that are giving out degrees in psychology. So every year graduates are increasing. Um, there are two things that we as Pakistanis love to do, which I'm sorry, this is a major generalization, मगर शादी और बच्चे. तो जैसे हमारे बच्चे बड़े होके स्कूलों में जा रहे हैं, schools are being more psychologically aware, which is making parents more aware of options in this field.
Right.
You know, most schools now either have at least one psychologist that is helping them out, or they have resource teachers who are, basic bachelor's करके जो psychology की teachers आपकी at least इतनी knowledge रखती हैं that they can deal with children in a particular manner. So that makes parents more aware कि ऐसी चीजें होती हैं. So that is one thing, and that is dispelling the stigma कि no, nobody is judging you. Nobody is trying to read your mind. Nobody is capable of reading your mind. If anyone says they are, they're messing with you. And उसके अलावा talk to someone. At least, what's the worst that'll happen? You know you're not crazy. So, what are you scared of?
Yeah, judging wali baat also reminds me of something else that you mentioned in your articles that we started off with. Ke Pakistan mein, I don't know if you were being specific about Pakistan or just generally saying कि grief, like group counseling, might also be counterproductive at times, that people may feel कि हम पे extra spotlight hai, or we're compromised or we're being singled out, and they might be reluctant to express what issues they may be facing. So how does that, is that like a Pakistan specific thing, or were you being general about it?
No, it's a general thing, and I guess again, it's been 3 years, so I have also learned a lot in the last 3 years. It depends on how things are done. Being professionals, it is our job to make sure that we do things in the most responsible way. आप ग्रुप काउंसलिंग भी हर तरह की हो सकती है. एक तो आप जबरदस्ती लोगों को बिठाते हैं ना कि चलो आओ बात करो, एंड उसके अंदर कैन बी काउंटर प्रोडक्टिव बिकॉज पीपल कैन बी लाइक हम यहाँ क्यों हैं, माहिर नफ्सियात क्यों बैठे हैं, एंड दैट इज वेयर यू वुड फील दैट you're being judged or it's bad for you.
Right.
And उसके अंदर भी मिसालें हैं कि so people went in. Uh, we while हमने कोशिश की थी कि हम सबसे कंसोलिडेट करें, इतनी बड़ी एफर्ट जब होती है ना, हर एक के साथ आप कंसोलिडेट नहीं कर सकते. तो बहुत और लोग भी गए थे पेशावर. एंड एक तो कहानी मैंने अभी दिसंबर में सुनी थी कि someone was doing a workshop with parents of APS employees, and while this person was used to using humor as a technique in workshops, they found it hard to use humor with the audience, and that limited their own skills, so it compromised their own presentation abilities as well as made the audience uncomfortable, because obviously if your therapist or the person in charge is uncomfortable, that discomfort comes out on everyone else.
Right. वो project होती है.
So you need to be very careful that you are comfortable, you are aware of what's happening, you know what you're doing, so that obviously if God forbid my child had died in the APS tragedy, I would not be the best person to be conducting a group session. Exactly like they say that surgeons cannot operate on their rishtedars.
Right.
For
That's
that
a rule?
reason, emotions, that is a rule internationally.
Okay.
Because you can get emotionally involved, and God forbid if the person stops breathing through surgery, you might just like lose your own shit.
Right.
So can I say shit?
Well, you have. So I guess it's fine. It's fine.
Okay. So the point is that you need to be very you need to know what you're doing. Otherwise, yes, it can be very counterproductive.
Okay. ठीक है. All right, that's I hope there's been an arc there somewhere. I was trying to have some sort of trajectory for this whole thing, and I think we've achieved it. In closing, how do you feel your APS efforts went? Would you say that they were successful in what you guys set out to do, or do you think it's not something that has a finish line, it's like an ongoing thing? What was that experience like for you overall, like in conclusion sort of way?
I think it was a very big project that we're trying to take up, and if nothing else, we got a foot in the door and ideas in the right minds. And while myself and the initial team that had gone in may not be involved in the project anymore, we are aware of good work that is happening over there for those people. There were 50 different ideas that were put forth to the government, some good and some bad. But at least they're trying, and credit should be given where it is due. Mental health is now something that is moving from myth to reality, and it's being considered, and I think that means more than anything else.
Right. It's on the table, at least, at the very
It's
least.
on the table, yes.
Pakistan mein to, unfortunately, we don't have the luxury of saying कि ये अच्छा ये बुरा है. Pakistan में ये कि थोड़ा बेहतर हो जाए, we'll take it.
Any government, not just Pakistan, governments generally take time to change their policies. And the fact that they're looking into it and they're working on policies and they're developing mental health action plans is beyond positive. It's leaps and bounds of positive. So that's a very, very good thing.
Great.
And the KPK government, the people we met were amazing as it is.
Great. That's a nice optimistic note to end our conversation on. Do you want to talk about, just before we end, you're not big on social media, so I can't tell people to follow you or find you on Facebook or something. Do you want to talk about very quickly your resettling the Indus thing, so that's like one thing you're directly involved with that maybe you could get people more interested in maybe?
Okay, so resettling the Indus, as I had earlier mentioned, we've been working for the last 6 years. We work on emergency disaster relief, which entails medical camps, distributions of, for example, last year in the earthquake, we distributed tents and blankets, over 5,000 tents and blankets. Then we move on to sustainable development, which includes house building, where we involve the locals in rebuilding their own houses and they get paid for it. So they learn new skills and they find alternate methods of income as well. We build schools. We have 3 schools running in Pakistan right now. And over the last 6 years, we built over 3,200 houses.
3,200 houses.
Approximately, yes.
Wow, that's insane. Acha, last 2 years?
Six.
Six, okay.
2010 set.
Even in 6 years, 3,000 houses seems like an insane number of houses. And your name is Resettling the Indus. Are you focused towards your operations are mainly in the Sindh area or just wherever?
Actually, I was every province. Include We have worked at least on a short-term project in every province. Not Kashmir, but Gilgit-Baltistan, yes.
Okay, okay. Great, great. ठीक है जी, Dr. Chairman Khan, thank you for thank you for this little over an hour of your time. And Resettling the Indus, they can find it on Facebook.
Yes, Resettling the Indus is on Facebook. Aside from that, there's a website, rtindus.org, and you can,
rtindus.org.
yeah, you'll find our Facebook link there as well, and you can inbox us on Facebook if you have any questions.
Right. And your email address is your professional address, or did you just give out your personal address to the world?
That's good enough. My professional address, I do have one, but it's harder to remember. So Sharmeen, Sharmen, 2 at gmail.com. If you have any psychology related questions, I'll be more than happy to help.
Okay,
I
great.
have a private practice, you guys.
Please, if you have problems, go to Sharmeen. She's like the best. ठीक है जी. Official private room. That's the name of my podcast, by the way. Official endorsement दे दी है हमने सबके सामने. And
Awesome, thanks.
yeah. Okay. Sharmeen Khan, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.